So there are people who want to celebrate when they know that they have not achieved anything. It's like in football, celebrating when there is what I call a near miss. So sex should be.
Welcome to the Dr. Marriage Says podcast. Pastor Denias, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. It's good to have you again. And last time, you remember, we were talking. We discussed a lot of things, and you gave us a lot of insightful information that was really helpful. And we've seen some of the comments section and how people have expressed their gratitude for the information that you shared in our first episode. And I remember you made quite several remarks that were very interesting. That I said we'd need to sit down and discuss them a bit later. He said, "No sex, no marriage." And you also said that if you have no sex in your marriage, then your marriage is in intensive care. Um, those remarks, where do they come from? And what are your thoughts? Are you still sharing the same sentiments? Is that still your position even today?
I want you to know that for me to make such statements, it is because of my experiences with so many couples. The truth is, it's very difficult, rarely, to find a married couple who are not doing sex if everything is normal. There are some incidences where people are no longer able to do sex because of age and other things. I'm going to cover that. But I'm talking about people who are sexually active, who are supposed to do it, and they are not doing it. That's what makes the marriage to be in the intensive care, because the other person is not happy. And because of that, it can lead to anything. Now, this is the thing that I want to establish. I want you to know that as far as sex is concerned, I'll compare it with three things. Number one, if you ask me what is sex, I would say to you, sex is time to celebrate. Sex is time. What are we celebrating? We are celebrating the life that we lived from the time that we woke up until the time we are meeting in the evening. There is something that must take place in between. If that thing is done properly, then when evening comes, when we are doing sex, it has to be fun because we are celebrating. Are you getting the point that I'm trying to put across? So there are people who want to celebrate when they know that they have not achieved anything. It's like in football, celebrating when there is what I call a near miss. When there is a near miss, people even sigh and say, "Go," but it's not a goal, it's a near miss. So, sex should be fun. Fun. If it's not fun, people shouldn't do it because it's painful to someone. So, sex is time to celebrate. Number two, related to that, you ask me what is sex, I would say to you, sex is the highest level of communication. You have done all the other communications. I love you, this and this and this. But when it comes to sex, it's now the opportunity to express your communication, your appreciation, whatever it is, at its highest level, because you are giving yourself into it. I think the reason why many people struggle with sex, it is because I would treat sex like a garden. If you take a garden and then you neglect it, you don't do anything to it, there's nothing that you get from it. All you can harvest are weeds, shrubs, and so forth. And who likes that? So the same happens with sex. If you want to get the best sex, both of you should be prepared to put some work in your garden. Both of you. Each one at the end of the day should ask yourself, how much effort have I put in this garden? Is there something for us to celebrate? Is there any communication that I can express to my friend. It's like I like joking. I already talked about it that we do sex related jokes and so forth. It's like, can you imagine if you buy a present for your spouse and then you give them the present and then they say thank you. If you are the person who believes like me, who says sex is the highest level of communication, I'll just say to you, your thank you is not enough. You haven't started. You are still to communicate at the highest level. This is more humor that should accompany this thing of sex. So I hope I've put across something interesting by saying sex is time to celebrate. And sex is the highest level of communication.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I've never heard of sex described as a celebration before, so that's an interesting perspective that you're bringing across. Because you said sex is a celebration. Number one, you also said sex is also the highest level of communication. I mean, I've never really looked at it from a communicative perspective, but that's what you're bringing to the table, and also saying that it's a garden that we need to work on. So I hope I'm understanding you well in what you've just
Exactly.
highlighted. Yeah, yeah. What do you think are the misconceptions about sexless marriages?
I like defining things, okay? Because if I define a thing, I will then operate in the parameters of my definition, okay? This is my only definition that I'm putting across for the sake of this presentation. I'm saying to you, a sexless marriage is a marriage where a couple is doing sex 10 times in a year. I didn't say 10 times in a week, I didn't say 10 times in a month or 10 times in a quarter. I said 10 times in a year which is 12 months. And I have a couple that is doing sex 10 times. That's what I call a sexless marriage. So, whatever I'm going to be putting across, discussing, I'm basing it in my definition of what is a sexless marriage. And I know someone may be having their own definition, but as far as I'm concerned, if I'm dealing with a couple who do sex less than or at least 10 times in a year, that's a sexless marriage.
Hmm. So it's not so much the absence of it. It's just like specifically for you, the definition is like 10 times. Is there a specific reason why you are opting for that number 10?
The number that I've used to someone who is in a marriage where there are no issues of old age, chronic illnesses, we'll probably talk of that, and other things, because there are so many things that lead to sexless marriages. But if those things are not there, then a normal, healthy couple is finding themselves doing less than 10 times in a year. Then in other words, that on its own shows that there is a problem, that is that there is someone who is being stuffed. And I want you to know that I'm making this presentation in the context of the issues that I've dealt with. Okay. And let me not divert from your question, because your question was about misconceptions. Okay. I want you to know that there are several misconceptions that may arise about sexless marriages. And because there are several misconceptions, I'll probably just talk about three only, which I regard as very common. Number one, this is a misconception. Remember, if people say sexless marriages are always a sign of problems, that's a misconception, because that's not true. Because there are so many things which I've already said that can lead to that, to people having some problems or sexless marriages. Another misconception is that a marriage without sex cannot be satisfying, or unsuccessful. In other words, in reality, many couples find fulfillment in other aspects of the relationship. Look at people we have been together for over 60 years and now they are in their 80s, 75. They have a lot of emotional, what I would call emotional intimacy, even if it's not physical. So, in other words, this is just to prove that sexless marriages can also be very fulfilling and satisfying, depending on a situation. You find a couple where they will come up with what I call shared values, where they respect each other, and where they are just good friends because they have come a long way together, and all what they are doing now is they are fond of cuddling each other and so forth, even if there is no sex. Then the third misconception is that our the partner, because there's always one partner who is always to blame for the lack of sex, okay, especially if it's not something that has been agreed. So in such a situation, uh, it's very common that one person wants to be blamed in such a situation. So that's a misconception as far as I'm concerned. So those are the three misconceptions that I can just highlight.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting those misconceptions because it helps us to gain some context. And I just wanted to have you ever encountered stories or examples of successful sexless marriages?
Eh, I would say no, and that's what led me to come up with the quotation that no sex, no marriage. In other words, you may want to know that when I'm counseling a couple, one of the things that I want to establish very early as we go on with the counseling session is to find out if when was the last time that this couple who are before me, when did the last time that they had sex? You will be shocked at the answers that I get. Someone will tell me that they can't remember. Can't remember when you had sex. You can't remember. Now you realize the 10 times that I was talking about. Someone will go like this. Whereas such a question you ask it to someone like me, when did you last have sex? I would just say probably 2 days ago, 3 days ago. And at least it cannot be more than 5 days ago. You get what I'm talking about. So it's I I know they're there. I've already told you that there are marriages that are there where people are not doing sex. Actually, we put them in the percentage. Sexless marriage, we say the studies that have been done where people sort of like generally agree is that they are 15% to 20% the highest that we give in between. That's where you find the percentage of sexless marriage. But I've not dealt with a couple that is not who are married and who are not doing sex, and they are still staying together. I've not come across such things.
Do you think love and intimacy can fully exist without sexual connection?
Yes, yes, yes. Uh, in many relationships, love and intimacy are built on shared experiences of life, where a couple has a deep understanding of each other, and where a couple is doing a lot of communication and they trust each other and they respect each other. In other words, you are looking at a couple. Probably we have been in a situation where probably someone has a serious illness that they have come up with for a long time. And now they begin to understand each other because they've been in the journey of illness together. And by so doing, they are able to fully exist uh, without the physical sex and be happy and loving to each other. So you also have is the situation that I talked about after my introduction, where some couples are in a situation of aging and healthy challenges, and in some cases, differing sexual desires. And in some cases, such couples then, as I said, they then have this bond, this connection that is found on emotional intimacy.
Question I just wanted to pose to you is how can partners navigate feelings of rejection or inadequacy in a sexless relationship?
The first thing is to have an open and non-judgmental conversation about each other's feelings. I would say if you are in such a situation, the first question that you need to sit down and talk is, how did we get to this state? We are not sick. We are not aged. We are healthy. You are less than 60 years. Everything is normal. And you are in a sexless marriage. What is the problem? How did we get here? This is the reason why I'm saying the discussion, the first thing, the discussion must be open, an open conversation whereby you are being honest with each other. You may want to know that there is a question right now that I'm telling all married question people to ask. And this question you're supposed to ask yourself. This is the question that you are supposed to ask yourself. Whoever is listening to me right now, I want you to write this question down and ask yourself this question. You will not remain the same. The question that I say, that I bring to people is, this is the question that you are supposed to ask yourself. As long as you are married, write this question down. The question is, if anything happens to me and I am not able to look after myself, will my spouse look after me? I'm asking that question to myself. If my answer is no, then you are in a wrong marriage. I'm sorry about that, but that's the truth of the whole matter. That is the truth of the whole matter. So, back to your question again, where you were talking about how they can navigate with feelings of rejection and inadequacy in a sexless marriage. The second thing is, which I talked about before, is to seek emotional intimacy. Okay? Focusing on emotional and intellectual closeness. Okay? And spending quality time together and engage in what I call meaningful conversation and show affection in non sexual ways like holding hands and doing things together that will make you feel connected. Then I would also encourage, especially the person who may be affected by this, to seek professional help. Okay? Why should you do that? Because it's very important that you should also have what I call individual self-care. Okay? So I think that is that.
Yeah, sorry, if you don't mind me, I just wanted to ask on that question that you said, if anything happens to me, is my partner able to look after myself? Why is that question important for us as couples to ask ourselves or to reflect on that question?
This, as I said, the question you're asking it yourself, and then you say no. In other words, the reason why you're saying no, it is because you know you're the person that you are married to. The friendship that you have, the connection that you have. Uh, in other words, we the truth is, in many marriages, people are faking things. This is the reason why people are not enjoying the best sex that they should enjoy. Believe me, many bedrooms they're doing sex not because it's fun, but there's a lot of rape that is taking place and other things. someone being pressured, and so forth. Okay? So, in other words, you are in a relationship, but you know very well that if there is an accident and I lose my legs, or I'm blind and so forth, and I'm no longer able to do things for myself, this other person cannot assist me. Then why are you there? If you are married to someone who can't look after you. Remember, this is actually one of the arguments why I said sexless marriages are there, because there's been this thing that has been there, an illness where the couple has gone through it together, and one of them is still healthy to do sex, but because of the situation that the other person is in, they are satisfied with this other intimacy that they are getting, which is not physical, because of the commitment. So we are looking at marriages where people are in, but there is no commitment. A marriage where you know very well that if something happens here, the other person will disappear. Man, I can give you very sad examples. I know people who are married and they've been unfortunate maybe to have children who have disabilities, and the other person disappeared. Can you imagine, of all the things? This is what I'm talking about. These are honest questions that people are supposed to ask themselves, but they don't want to ask. That's why I say any married person should write this question down. If anything happens to me and I'm not able to look after myself, will my spouse look after me? If the answer is no, then why are you there? How can you enjoy sex when the answer is no to such a question? This is the reason why some people feel used in marriage or when they are doing sex. You feel somebody is using you because you know that I'm not being loved. Right now, we have situations where I can bring in my other quotations where I say there are other couples who are enjoying while others are enduring. It's because of these things. Where there is love, true love, the marriage is exciting and fun, and everyone is celebrating. It's not one person who is celebrating. Both parties are celebrating.
Mm. Well, yeah, thank you for clarifying that question. Yeah, you've given a lot of given us a lot of things to think about regards to that, clarifying the purpose of that question. Thank you for that. My next question is, what are some strategies for maintaining emotional closeness without physical intimacy?
I can just maybe list 6 things, and someone may just want to try 3 of those. Number one, just make a commitment to yourself that daily I want to send 2 to 3 text messages to my spouse in a day. Number two, just listening. Just listening. You live with somebody who doesn't listen to you. Do you know what women have told me? Where I have say separate sessions with women on their own and men on their own, women have told me that they wish their husbands had 3 ears because 2 are not enough. And they are saying the third one must be on the forehead so that they listen. Watch in a marriage how a woman repeatedly says, "Are you listening? Are you listening?" So if you can have a spouse who listens to you without them touching a gadget, without them touching the screen, actually, for people who are married, the moment your partner starts to speak, if there is a TV, it needs to be switched on. You need to pause it. You need to put your phone down and listen. Just listen. Even if you will not answer or say anything, just for the other person to know that I am talking and my spouse is listening, it brings satisfaction. Number three, It is just spending quality time together. Like together, I'm talking about together. You may decide to read a book together. Imagine one person is reading, the other one is listening. Simple. Watching a movie together, going to church together as a couple. Wow. Number 4, which I talked about before, showing affectionate that are non-sexual, just cuddling and so forth, and also expressing appreciation and gratitude to your spouse. And then lastly, gestures, surprise gestures, where you're just surprising your spouse to show that you are thinking about them. They are a priority in your life.
Like, how do different cultures approach the idea of sex, like within a marriage? Have you, like in your interactions, have you had um,
Uh,
any
I,
noticed any differences?
the truth is that is a very huge question. It's a huge question. I'll just maybe just put just a little bit nuggets here. And then number one, I want you to know that in some cultures, the issue of sex within marriage is regarded as a secret matter. You don't discuss it with anyone. Even if the woman is not satisfied, there is no way where she can talk about that. And then in some cultures, it's more like a taboo. I know a little bit of my culture. We also regard it like that a little bit, though when we are the men on our own, we talk about it because of civilization now. And in some cultures, it's only the husband who should initiate sex, and the woman cannot initiate it. And then comes our Western way of doing things now, where it's now an open topic. And some of us have now fully benefited from that because we are able to discuss sex fully, and the wife is liberated to be able to initiate it, which is what it's supposed to be like.
Thank you. So, do you think societal pressure adds unnecessary strain on relationships with little to no sex?
Um, yes. And this one is interesting because the reason why I'm saying yes, it is because we are inviting people in our marriages who are not supposed to be there. Okay? In marriage is has what I call an inner circle. That inner circle, I also call it a sacred circle, holy circle. In that circle, they should only be husband, wife, and God. Those are the only 3 people who must be in that circle. Now, in other words, the issue that we are talking about of a sexless marriage is supposed to be a secret. If a marriage is done properly, nobody should know that you are not doing sex properly, because this issue is between the two of you. You are keeping the inner circle tight. But if you are taking information from the inner circle, sending it outside, then you have a problem. Okay? In other words, this is the pressure that we give ourselves. We give ourselves unnecessary pressures when we involve people outside, and the people outside are very clever. They are doing sex maybe twice a month, but because they want to be seen like they are role models and so forth, they will lie and say we are doing sex 6 times a month. And you want to be like them when you are doing sex once a month. So, in other words, it brings unrealistic expectations. This thing of bringing people in the inner circle who are not supposed to be there.
When you're younger, when you're still boys. because you're always, saying things that, I'm like this and propping each other up. But sometimes you find that there's not much going on. It's just, talk, 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 talk. So what you're saying is that still affects even marriages and like even adults as well. When we should guard against that. So yeah, I hope I heard you right. If that's what you're
Yeah,
saying. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think you did share some practical tips in terms of couples who want to maintain intimacy without sex. I think you did highlight or speak about that earlier. So I won't make you repeat that unless if there's certain things that you specifically want to add around that.
Yeah, yeah, just maybe like trying to summarize. Like if I'm to summarize what I've said in that area, I would say prioritize quality communication, quality, and also get involved in what I would say shared activities, shared hobbies, and shared interests, and also get involved in learning together. Can you imagine picking a new skill, the two of you, and you learn it together? You do a DIY of something together, okay? And also, being playful, playing, and also coming up with routines that you can do in the morning and evening. I would say, I think that is enough.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Those are good tips that we can really try to follow as well. So, how can couples openly discuss their needs and expectations around sex? Because, as you said, there are cultural
Yeah.
issues, taboos, and people don't really want to discuss these issues. So, how can they do that?
I think your question is actually driving me to what I would say this is the climax of the discussion. Yeah. Right now, I want to give an exercise, an activity that I would call, say, it's a magic activity. I want everybody to get a pen and a paper, or right now as I'm talking, I want you to text your spouse if he's not with you right now. I want you to make this text that I'm saying to you. This is what I want you to text to your partner. Say to your partner, can you list for me your 5 needs in this marriage in order of their importance? I will repeat what you are supposed to text to your spouse right now. List for me your 5 needs in this marriage in order of their importance. Now, listen to this. The 5 are going to come, but I want you to take just the first 2 and ignore the rest. Just the first 2. And watch with any man, sex will be among the first 2. It will definitely be there. In other words, people are in a marriage, but you don't know the needs of the other person. So how are you making the other person happy when you don't know their needs? The 5 needs are supposed to assist you on the things that you are supposed to do to make your partner happy, so that when evening comes, you are celebrating because you have been doing the 2 things that are the needs of this person. You can't avoid to disappoint on the 2 needs. Someone has already told you that these are my first 2 needs. So take care of those. Number 2 that I would want to talk about is when you want to discuss your needs and expectations around sex, can you choose the right time? The worst time to want to discuss about sex is after you have done it. That's the worst. That's the worst. You don't. I mean, you just be creating unnecessary fires. Talking about the right time and place, I'm reminded of something that happened many years ago, and I'm not giving names, so nobody, even the owner, may not even have an idea of what I'm talking about. But I remember very clearly it was on a Wednesday. I was phoned by another lady, and she was having a problem with the husband. And she had talked about it, but the husband was not taking her serious. So when she phoned me, she said, I want to divorce him. I want to leave because of this thing. So I said to her, because she had heard me make a presentation somewhere, so she had my number. So I said to her, listen, don't divorce this man. There's something that I want you to try before you divorce him. I want you to plan. You know, when I was talking to her, I was talking of something like that. She should plan for something like a month or so. Said, I want you to plan a holiday where you are going to invite your husband, but you pay everything for him, everything paid for. Then when you are there, I suggested that you should take him out for a weekend. So you go on a Friday, you reach there, dinner, go to bed, Saturday whole day. Then I said, Saturday evening, I want you to present this discussion. Do you know what that lady did? The moment we finished the telephone conversation, she phoned the husband and said, look, can you sort out things? I'm taking you somewhere this weekend. We are going holiday out on Friday and we'll come back Sunday. So everything is paid for. Just be available. The guy was so excited. They went for holiday. This is what happened. I like this one because that Friday they got there, they went for dinner. After dinner, when they're in the bedroom, the husband said, listen, sit down. She sat on the bed. He said to her, I want you to tell me the truth. Why did we come here? We always pay for holidays. We always do half. Why have you paid everything? Why have you paid? I want you to tell me what is happening. And she said to me, Pastor, I just had to tell her the truth. She says, listen, I'm seeing a marriage officer. I wanted to divorce you. But he said I should take you out and tell you, and if you don't change, I will divorce you. And he said, what is the thing? She said her story. The man said, I won't do it again. I won't do it again. So I did know that it was affecting you so much. Choosing the right time and the right place. It's very, very important. Very, very important. Number 3, when you are discussing your needs and expectations, remember what I said? Discuss them in the context only of the inner circle. Nobody should know. Nobody should know. Number 3, I want to suggest it has actually happened because of our first episode. I always say to people, one of the ways of improving your marriage is for you to get a marriage book and read it together, or to listen to a marriage presentation. This is what happened with our first episode. Somebody phoned me from overseas and he took close to 20 minutes to me on the phone. He says, man, I listened to your episode and I'm not home. I'm away. I'm only going home on the 24th of December. But I want you to know that that evening, when you are in the bedroom, we are going to listen to this 1-hour episode with my wife together. Can you imagine reading a marriage book together? Someone is reading it loud, and then you come across the weakness of the other person. It's very easy to say to your spouse, this thing that we are reading here, do you know that it affects one of us here? You will not be offended because it's coming from a book. Just as good as you listen to my episodes, you are not offended. I mean, if the other person says to you, "This what this guy is talking about," you are not offended because it's coming from someone else. Always, when you are discussing the needs and expectations around the sex, avoid blaming the other person. Avoid blaming the other person. I talked about it in my first episode that always use the I statement always. You can't say to your spouse, you never want to have sex. You'll be defensive. But if you say, I feel distant when we don't share intimate moments, it's me expressing. The other thing that you can do is to compliment and encourage each other. Imagine you going to work and then uh, you phone your wife. You're driving to work and you phone your wife and you say, honey, I just want you to know that I have memories of what we did last night. Even if you're doing it once a month, I tell you, it will change. I have the memories of what we did last night. I want to thank you. And I would love that more. What can I do so that I can have that? Throw in some humor into that. Throw in some humor. You are going to see a quotation on this point that I've talked about. There's going to be a sex quotation in the episode about this. And finally, because you love your friend and you have discussed this thing uh, in an open way, it's very important that there should be some compromises. There should be some compromises. Discussions around sex should never be taken very seriously. They should be done with humor so that nobody's offended at the end of the day.
Do you think that the stigma around sexless marriages is changing in modern society today?
Yes, I would say yes. And the reason is there's a lot of increased awareness now. You know, because of social media, there's a lot of breaking of traditional norms. Because of social media now, people are writing blogs about these things, the podcasts, like what we are doing right now. All these things, they are making people to be aware of what is happening. And lastly, the fact that there is now therapy available and support is available. So nobody should suffer the stigma outside there.
And like, what advice would you give to couples who are struggling with mismatched sexual desires or a sexless marriage?
Yes, I think this is a very sensitive issue. And as I've said before, be open, be honest, and be compassionate in your communication. And number two, create a safe space where if someone is talking, be empathetic and non-judgmental. And being also honest with your desires, and both parties should be honest with each other about their frustrations, preferences, and their sexual needs. And as I said before, when people are honest, people are able to go to the underlying causes, the underlying causes. Then lastly, the person who may feel affected by that should consider individual therapy. So the therapy is not for the couple, but the therapy is for the individual who may think is mainly affected by that.
Mm, mm. Wow, thank you. You've shared quite a lot today that I think are useful tips for couples because this is a very a subject that causes a lot of division and divorces, I presume. And I think it's important for us to really discuss it. I know a lot of people are very shy and are not keen to discuss this kinds of topics. So thank you, Dr. Marriage, Pastor Denias, for really coming out and being open and sharing what you've shared today. And I'm sure we still can, go further with this topic and discuss many other issues. So if you have any questions or anything that you may feel maybe you want to discuss, or want us to discuss, rather, please feel free to share it in the comments. Feel free to subscribe, to like the video, and share it with other people that you think might need this video. So until we meet again in our next episode, may God bless you and may you take care.